Good afternoon and welcome to Purdue University and the CERIAS Security Seminar. Our speaker today is Dr. Kenji Takahashi from NTT Information Sharing Platform Laboratories in Tokyo. His research interests include identity management for next generation networks, and his topic today is trends in identity management. Dr. Takahashi.
Hi, good afternoon. Konnichiwa. My name is Kenji Takahashi. I'm going to talk about trends in identity management. So let me introduce who we are. Let me introduce my identity or our identity. So NTT, I belong to NTT's R&D center. And under NTT, there are several companies, including Docomo and other telecommunication companies. And at the R&D center, we are working for these operating companies. So as you see, NTT is a huge company, but current dollar rate must be, revenues must be much bigger, I guess. So let me go through agenda. I'm going to talk about identity management and mostly talking about standardization. Right now, there are many competing standardization for the identity management. So I'm going to talk about the trends and most importantly, how we can work together towards the harmonization of those standards. And also, I'd like to discuss some use cases and lesson learned from the use cases and conclusion on the future direction. So here is identity management, as you know, maybe increasingly important because of those four perspectives: tougher compliance requirements, greater security issues, and changing business climates, and emerging services-oriented society. So many things are outsourced, and our society and industry are becoming more service-oriented. And for instance, for compliance, as you know, SOX Act, and also in Europe, EU Article 27. Also in Japan, there is a Personal Information Protection Act has been effect since last year. Also, FFIEC required stronger authentication for online banking. And as you know, from the security program, identity theft, for instance, 45 billion damage. Sounds like a recent Wall Street meltdown. So, and also from business, there's a lot of pressure from business sides, M&A, and also globalization, flattening world. Those business pressure requires more efficient identity management. So market forecast says, as you see here, 26 billion in 2006, and in 2014, it would be 12.3 billion. But I don't know that. Considering current economic situation, maybe the number may be smaller, but and also service orientation, so personalization, Web 2.0, and cloud computing or SaaS or other outsourcing trends are demanding more efficient and effective identity management. And this is my view of computing industry. Actually, I've been working in IT industry for more than 20 years in Silicon Valley and in Tokyo. Now people call it attention economy. People are paying for services by paying attention. So it's kind of passive and implicit and enterprise centric. But in future, I hope intention economy will come, and in the intention economy, identity will play a major role, and it should be a proactive, explicit, and user-centric. Looking back, in 80s, client OS is a competitive edge and major battleground for the IT industry. And in 90s, many people forget about Netscape, but at that time, Netscape and Microsoft had fought each other, and Microsoft won. But right now, in these decades, Google is a champion, and they got lots of attention and leading market industry. Advertise industry. And then in next decades, I hope identity will play a major role, and maybe key player would be Facebook and so on. And observing current situation in, for instance, in consumer market, SNS, blog, photo sharing, Second Life, Twitter, those kind of services, identity is a key component. And also enterprise, e-government, industry sector, audit trail, strong authentication, single sign-on, e-government services, and national security, anti-terrorism major. Those are very much related to identity management. And what is identity management? So, I just consulted several online dictionaries. It says just set of behavioral personal characteristics by which an individual is recognizable as a member of group. This is very related to identity management. Also, integrity is also important. The sense of self, providing sameness and continuity in personality over time. In that sense, this portion, behavioral or personal characteristics, I'm gonna call it identity data. It includes name, domicile, age, gender, social security number, passport number, or those kind of things. Also, maybe in cyber world, it could be a Google ID, email address, and so on. Also, relationships or reputation, those kind of social aspects is a very important identity data. And what is identity data management? This is my try, is let an individual control and use its identity in a secure and privacy protected manner by managing the integrity of identity through its life cycle. And then this leads a question that what is privacy? Then maybe I'm gonna little bit talk about privacy. Actually, everybody talks about privacy, so I'm stupid enough to try here. So, as actually privacy was dead. Most of you guys were born actually in 1969. Jerry Rosenberg said in discussion of census, he said privacy is dead, and privacy has died several times actually. Scott McNally said privacy is dead in regards of with regards of maybe web usage, and also actual network surveillance is available everywhere. Is used everywhere. For instance, London is very famous or notorious for the surveillance. And ironically, I read a book called Understanding Privacy, but it's on the first page it says privacy is nobody can articulate what it means. So, but I think this is natural because privacy is based on space we we act. So our activities goes beyond other spaces. You need another type of privacy, and privacy is born. Privacy is dead and born in different spaces. So, my point here is notion of privacy is changing over time, and kind of reincarnation. And here is my view of privacy from perspective of federated identity management. Very generally speaking, generally accepted definition of privacy is basically right to control the access to personal data. And here I'd like to define that privacy is right to control the unlinkability. From the federated identity management, privacy protection means the implementation of user controllable unlinkability. Unlinkability means here is identity, real me, probably represented by my DNA and my life. And then here is identifier, like my account in my email address or social security number. And then here is event. For instance, this is much younger than real me, but for instance, 25 years old. Or maybe I bought some book somewhere. And those events should be, link between my account and event should be unlinkable. Or at least I can control this linkability or unlinkability, and then between these two. For instance, anonymity is a way of protecting privacy. Just make this link unlinkable. And here is a canonical view of identity. For instance, you can by introducing pseudonym here, so you can control unlinkability or linkability between account and other account. Also, you could have another account linked to this account, and then in that way you can do I'm going to explain later, but in that way you can do a single sign-on. If you authenticate it as account A, you can also authenticate it as account B and account C too. So also, maybe this guy has another account. So this set, we call it a persona, so different character set. So maybe I have a persona as an employee of company, or I can be a father of family as a persona here, and both live in Tokyo and bought a house or something like that. Or identity could be a collective, so that account X is my family, so more than one identity can be linked to one account. So overview of standardization. There are several, mainly three major initiatives exist today: Liberty Alliance, SAMO, Information Card, and OpenID. You guys know all these three? Have you ever heard about these three standardization, or have you ever used these standards? Maybe yes. So, and harmonization efforts are in progress, and adoption is increasing in many different industries like e-government, enterprise, telecom, social networks, services, and SaaS. And again, let me go into details of each three major initiatives. Information card is actually, it's a little bit confusing. People call it card space or information card, but card space is a kind Windows-based implementation of information card. So information card is managing identity as a set of cards, just like credit cards. So you can have many cards as I explained as a persona. So persona as a card. So you can manage each persona as a card and then present or show that cards to specific services. So major players of course are Microsoft and other big company like Google, Nobel, Oracle. They just this year they established the Information Card Foundation and Liberty Alliance Samo. This is, I think, oldest initiative. So managing identities by federation, major players, including NTT and other big company. Like I don't know why, but there are many telecommunication companies in Liberty Alliance, including BT, France Telecom, and so on. And OpenID is recently becoming very popular and managing identity as a URIs. So use a URI as an identity so that you can use that identity everywhere. So major players include Google, IBM, Microsoft, VeriSign. Actually, Microsoft, just yesterday, Microsoft announced that they will support OpenID in Windows Live services. And actually, this is very complicated. So that is a biggest problem for us as a service provider. So there are so many standardization efforts. So actually, I have to make a change every week or every month to this. Slides. So here is newly founded as an organization like Open Social Foundation for social network API and OOs and so on. So it's really hard for us to follow the standardization activities, and also and it related to many industries like internet, even broadcast, and also healthcare, education, and of course related to telecom. So recently, SAMO is become ITUT recommendation, just like X.509. SAML 2.0 is right now is X1141. X1141, and also a big discussion in identity management in ITUT right now, and also in ISOC. ISOC is a kind of parent organization of IETF. That there is a big initiatives going on about trust and identity. And let me go through our Liberty Alliance project. I myself is been actively involved in Liberty Alliance project activities. It's established in 7 years ago, and over 150 members from a wide range of industry and sectors around the world. And some members from Purdue Universities are also participating in some activities. And also activities include, of course, develops technical specification, but also we are working on business guidelines and use case white papers and public policy papers and so on. And we provide open forum to discuss digital identities. Also, in many, vertical and horizontal industries, in local chapters and also industry-specific special interest group like health, e-government, and identity theft prevention or something like that, and organizing conformance testing. Actually, this Liberty Alliance conformance test is required by GSA for procurement. So if you'd like to, sell products to GSA, you have to, pass the test. And here is Liberty technology architecture. Liberty is developed IDFF, and eventually it evolved into SAML 2.0. That is basically for single sign-on here, and also some web services framework. This is for instance, mashing up web services. And when mashing up web services, you need some authorization mechanism so that one service can access to another service for personal data. In that case, you need some authorization mechanism. So IDWF provides such authorization mechanism as well as discovery services for web services. And here is in digital identity management, life cycle management is very important, from starting from the birth to the death of identity. Actually, in the market, provisioning accounts for right now half of the market, but will account for 2/3 by 2014. So when people talk about identity management, they are mainly focused on single sign-on or authentication. But managing identity life cycle, especially provisioning and change control, those kind of things are very important in market perspectives. And Liberty provides many different kinds of specification to support all phases of identity life cycle. Oh, by the way, if you have any question, please ask anytime. So here is some more assertion markup, security assertion markup language. We call it SAML. So it's a XML-based framework for expressing assertion claims about identity of user, and also it also comes with protocols for moving those assertions around, and maintained by OASIS, originally developed by Liberty. And when assertion and protocols are used together, most notable application is for single sign-on, but you can use SAML for instance, authorization or attribute exchange. And assertion are used as a security token or identity token format in information card. And SAML is successful especially in enterprise, financial, e-government, and higher education. CERIAS 2.0 is right now, that's exactly the same as SAML 2.0. Maybe I'm gonna skip this. Yeah. And here is identity federation process. So to use a federated like single sign-on, you have to go through this process. First, this is a user-centric process. So users can themselves federate two different accounts, and then you use that federated account. You can do a single sign-on, and then use access and use services, and then close single sign-on session. This is also important, and Liberty protocols or SAML protocol provides a single logout. So just single sign-on is a little bit dangerous, because you sign on many many services, and I mean, if you don't sign out, it's a very, I mean, it causes a very serious security problem. So to avoid that problem, Rivat SAML provides a single logout function too. And eventually, also at the user's choice, users can defederate accounts if you'd like to. If you'd like to, I mean, if you don't need the single sign-on anymore for the specific service. And here is overview of, again, I mean, you need users first have to federate identity and then use a single sign-on. Here is privacy identity federation from the view of privacy protection. So in SAML, SAML, IDP and SP accounts of users by pseudonym, as I explained before. So this eliminates need for global ID and mitigate risk of unintended disclosure of real account names, and also ensure unlinkability of SP accounts. So that in that way, I mean, user can, I mean, control unlinkability, and therefore you can protect privacy, or you can control privacy. And here is some single sign-on procedure. This is important. So let me go through details of this process. So first, user request for the service at the service providers, and then service providers need to authenticate the user. Then goes to IDP via, I mean, HTTP redirect, browser redirect. So that, I mean, through this via user, I mean, SP service providers goes to IDP to request assertion for authentication, basically, and then between user and identity provider, authentication should be executed. And then, I mean, for the authenticate, you can use any authentication method. I mean, SAML is agnostic to authentication method, so you can use password, or you can use PKI or biometric, and so on. But important point here is that so that authentication context should be conveyed to service provider, because, I mean, service provider depend on authentication to IDP, so they like to know how users are authenticated. Maybe if user just authenticated by user and password, they don't wanna provide CERIAS or, I mean, high cost services. And in that case, they, I mean, request stronger authentication in this, I mean, procedures. And then after authentication has been done, goes to step 4. IDP sends the assertion with authentication context, which represents how users are authenticated, and then service provider verify assertion, and then user can access to service and use the services. And also for the second service, so user don't have to do authentication. I mean, you can users can skip step 3, so that they don't have to authenticate again, and then use services without login procedure. This is a single sign-on mechanism. So users don't have any special software. User just need a standard web browser. That's the beauty of some web SSO protocols. And maybe I'm gonna skip this. This is the point here is that there is another way of doing single sign-on. So there are lots of way. This is specific scenario for the HTTP some web SSO. And as I said, some as a whole give a deployer the choice of communication mechanism. So they designed for different purpose and environments. But I'm gonna, for the sake of time, I'm gonna skip this. But authentication context is a very important notion. So I'm gonna refer later. And maybe this is canonical view of summary assertion. Maybe I'm gonna skip. And the important point here is summary assertion again can be used in 3 different purposes. Authentication, which I explained, but it also can be used for authorization and also attribute exchange, so that you can express some attribute like I'm 40 years old, or I'm a male, or I'm an Asian, or something like that in the statement. There are different kind of statement. Here is authentication statement, but there is a authorization statement and attribute statement, so that you can convey other kind of information. And maybe I'm gonna skip this, but and Liberty ID WSF is another framework. This is a SOAP-based framework for locating and invoking identity-based web services. So permission-based, main application is permission-based attribute sharing and invoking service under control of user. And subscription and notification is also provided by IDWSF. And summary assertion as a default security token. Let me explain specific case of sharing user attribute of a service provider with another service provider on demand. This is a kind of mashup scenario, so that SP1 service and SP2 service are mashed up. In that case, currently, there are, for instance, in Google or Flickr, there are no authorization at all. That is a very dangerous from security perspectives. But in this mechanism, when a service access to other service, web service for specific data, that service can convey convey the information about for whom that service is, on behalf of whom that service access to the information. In that way, you can control the access to the personal data. So first, single sign-on to IDP, and then request the service with summary assertion, and then request information for access to an identity service. But to provide the service, SP1 needs some data managed by SP2. Then maybe first SP1 should locate where the data is. So ask the discovery service and saying that I need this data, some specific data on behalf of this lady. That kind of information are conveyed by SAML, and then information is going back to service provider one, and then using that location information and kind of access ticket, they access to SP2. So now this guy knows where it is, and then authorization ticket. Then with that ticket and location information, access to SP2, and then access SP2 proves that this guy is access on behalf of this lady, then provides that kind of information. But before that, you can, with this mechanism, you can ask for consent from this user. So in step 4, request for this service request for user profile, but SP2 really, confirm that users consent via it's called interaction service, but on demand. Then after getting consent from the user, it provides a user profile, and then finally it provides a service to users. In that way, you can provide a mashed up service with security and privacy protection. Maybe I have 30 minutes. Okay, so IDWS people services just for instance social network services. So maybe I'm gonna skip this, but if you are interested in, I don't have enough time, but if you are interested in search for people service in Liberty Alliance site. So, and other topic is identity governance framework. We are working on this. It's in progress, so I'm going to skip this. And another important project we are working on, identity assurance framework. So people sometimes ask how, they need some assurance level, how trustworthy the identity is. In the government application or military services, that kind of assurance level is very important, they said. So that we are working on a framework to explain assurance level of identity. Right now there are 4 levels, from little or no confidence to a very high level of confidence, so that you can use for criminal investigation or military services. So it requires multi-factor remote authentication with hardware-based tokens and such. And maybe I'm going to skip. So information card is again provide a constant user interface for users. This is okay. This is one of the user interface. You guys, have you ever used information card? You okay? But it's not. In my impression, it's not so widely used yet. But I think it's a great user interface and can be combined with other protocols, such, for instance, OpenID and SAML. So, it's a complementary technology, I guess. But anyway, information card consists of 3 components. Identity selector. This is the most important component in my opinion. Again, this is identity selector, so that you can choose which persona or which card you wanna use. Right now it has 2 cards, and right now he has 6 cards, and then this is a history cards I send to that site, and then maybe you can use another card, different card, and so on. And security token server is card itself doesn't include store any information. It's a kind of link to data, so real data is stored in security token server. So that if you send a card, with that information in the card, real data will be sent by security token server. And the relying party, of course, consume that kind of identity data. So this is a little bit detailed, but by the way, open source software is available. So you can use identity selector even in a Unix environment. Also Mac too. And maybe I'm gonna skip this, but this is a flow of information card. And OpenID 2.0. 2.0 is important portion. Actually, there is OpenID 1.1 and 1.2 or something. But in 2.0 at the 2.0 version, similar protocols are merged into one, and then at that time, OpenID has been becoming very popular, and it's used in many major sites like again Google, and recently Windows Live announced to support OpenID. Actually, it is very similar to SAML protocol which I explained. Actually, OpenID 2.0 flow is very similar. Actually, use HTTP redirection, and different point is that only different point is how to locate identity provider, because user provides location of IDP as a URL. So service provider usually finds OpenID location, OpenID provider location. That's the main difference. But other protocol of sequence are almost the same. And of course, OpenID use global ID. So use exactly the same ID for any or other relying parties. So that may cause some privacy problem, maybe. But much lighter protocol than SAML. That is one of the reasons people use OpenID 2.0. And standardization status of OpenID is currently completed single sign-on and attribute exchange, and in PAPE, actually OpenID provider authentication policy extension is called PAPE. Recently, I think standardization process recently completed. Maybe at the draft level, but so standard. Maybe I have only 5 minutes. So again, as I explained, there are three different protocols, but standard harmonization are going on. At the most famous project is Concordia project, and people are working on together to harmonize these protocols. And here is some example, but I don't have a time to explain this. But so if you are interested in, I'm gonna send these slides. And there are some use cases. For instance, Samo is very successful in enterprise market and mobile and telecom. NTT also provides commercial services using Samo 2.0 for over 20 million users right now. And for instance, France Telecom in France provides over services with using Samo more than 50 million users. So it's a very popular. And also this news is also was announced yesterday, Geneva, the successor of Microsoft Active Directory File Server ADS FS will support SAML 2.0. So this is will have a great impact in enterprise market. I mean, adoption of SAML in enterprise market, I think. And here is some which I explained. So we are providing services over 20 million users right now, and this is important. Lessons learned. So system analysis and design of identity management systems should consider migration procedure, and troubleshooting problem tracking is very important, because as I explained in a canonical view of identity, it's very complicated. So if something wrong with identity, it's really difficult to trace back, because I mean on purpose we make it difficult. So I mean if something wrong, it's really difficult to trace. And right now, I mean, there's no liability scheme that makes everyone happy. Especially relying party, by definition, rely on IDP for the authentication. So if something wrong happens at the IDP, who should be responsible, or who is liable? That is a problem we haven't solved yet. And good news is eliminating login barrier will increase service usage. Actually, in some cases, I mean this, we observed this in constantly in different cases in France and in Japan. More than 203% increase of usage we observed. Actually, because I mean, or maybe I'm gonna explain if you are interested in. And some are adopted by e-government in the world. In this case, more than close to 30 government organizations are adopting SAML. And identity as a service are becoming a very important trend. And then in this year, already several startups are established for the identity as a service. So it's becoming an important trend, I guess. And next generation network application, and also maybe I'm gonna explain some. And also another use case is digital TV, and also mobile is also important application. We have developed IDP on mobile phone, so it's an independent server on running on a mobile phone, so that you can use strong authentication of mobile phone for the web services. For instance, right now, I mean, mobile phone has many authentication mechanisms like PKI, fingerprint recognition. So that kind of authentication functionality can be used. With this mechanism, you can use that authentication functionality for the web access. And that's about it. So the conclusion is harmonization is important, and it's in progress, and identity management could bring more service usage, better customer retain rate, and reduction in costs of customer support. And for successful identity management, deployers need to take the identity life cycle into consideration and put troubleshooting measure in design phase, and careful negotiate and agree upon business contract among stakeholders. And future research agendas include these things. So thank you. Any questions? It's time.
Doc, thank you very much.